Yep, I'm Peter Butler. I'm a director of the School of Design and Community Development and extension specialist in landscape architecture. I'm happy to join you today for the Throwdown Thursdays. So I'm going to talk about a little bit about the work that I do in community design and development, bringing students and teams of faculty to perform community planning and design. This is just a listing of some of the partners that we work with. Seems like wherever we go in West Virginia these days, people are talking about local food, community gardens, healthy communities. And so oftentimes community gardening and food production are central to the community design process in setting goals and objectives. I'll also tell you a little bit about, and I'm not sure if Kristen has shared the project that we're working on together, the high obesity prevention project that is really tied to local development, tied to food systems, health, and recreation and active living. So when we look at a community scale plan, there are a lot of identified opportunities for food production. This is just a diagram showing those opportunities, most of the opportunities. There are still others, though, of course. But thinking about if we're looking at a community-wide plan, where we can fit food production into that plan for success. One of the things that we were just enriched with this semester, talking about redevelopment of their floodplain, where they lost 2 schools back in 2016. And we thought about the opportunity for developing agriculture in that floodplain. And so that was part of our proposals to develop a small farming operation in the floodplain. Community orchards can be really wonderful public spaces and also very productive. There's a little bit of tricky management involved with apple trees, but if they are well maintained and supported, they can be a successful way to develop food production in the communities. Most of our schools in the state, I think, have greenhouses or high tunnels. And so, of course, the school sites tying education, healthy eating, and I think now that there's more openness to food produced in the garden of schools being used for school lunches, et cetera. So that's a really great way to integrate edible landscapes into the community. Then, of course, neighborhood gardens. I'll show some examples of that. We just worked in Clay 2 years ago in Clay County, and they developed a community garden as a part of trailhead site redevelopment. I think neighborhood gardens are kind of tricky. Oftentimes, I think maybe we've seen that in communities where some have been established potentially, and maybe they're not as well maintained as they could be. And so the idea of stewardship and oversight is really important when considering neighborhood gardens. So this is basically what the students start with in terms of the framework for integrating community agriculture into West Virginia communities. Wherever we work with the people on the community plan. So this is a meeting that was held down in Marlinton in Greenbrier County. And so you can see the students have aerial photos of the communities, and they're actually mapping different assets, not only for food production, but for other types of community development as well. And I think that's something that, just for local advocacy and planning, it would be a good activity for you all out in communities to kind of create an inventory of underutilized spaces and to think about how they could be potentially used for local agriculture, local food production. So the students come up with some pretty extraordinary ideas and images. Many times, as you'll see just ahead here, those images and that vision is translated into funding documents to go out to grantors for funding. And so this is the Mullins Opportunity Center in Wyoming County. And then the students kind of visualize this idea of creating a farmer's market vending system with temporary kiosks so that they could maximize the use of that space. This is an example of the students looking at residential landscapes. They mapped out that there were 11 acres of lawns in the community. And then they did some planning and quantification of how much food could be produced if those lawns were turned into gardens. Another site in Mullins is a brownfield. One of the projects that we're working on at WVU is it's called the Technical Assistance to Brownfield Communities. And so if a community has a brownfield or a post-industrial landscape that they want to look to redevelop, we can provide support in terms of planning and design and grant writing or assisting with grant development to see those sites utilized. So in Mullins, they talked a lot about this brownfield site and how it could become a really central food production area tied to community and economic development. In Oceana, in Wyoming County, we worked at the Wyoming West School and looked at integrating these smaller scale educational gardens within that landscape. An example of another planning project was in Marlinton, where we were, where the image from before was taken. And so mapping these community assets or opportunities in terms of underutilized spaces. And then some of the students chose to integrate food production as a part of their programming. So this is another brownfield site. It's right on the Greenbrier River in the floodplain. So it would be an appropriate use for local agriculture. And then they create the visualizations. This is, again, that idea of a community orchard tied to another community facility. And then they create planting pallets that are integrating those food production plants. Another project in Marlinton, we worked on this site next to the Pocahontas Opera House. This is essentially now it's in this image just a gravel parking lot, and they were looking to transform that space into a farmer's market and and performance space, kind of a food culture destination. The community members identified the programming. The first one was farmer's market. The second one was having a destination, a stop along the Mountain Music Trail. And then students created designs. The horizontal red line on the top is a shelter for a farmer's market. And then the smaller rectangle is the stage area. So again, these planning documents, these drawings can be sent out to funders to support implementation of the projects. So the funding that supported this project was from the soil and water conservation grants that the governor awards every year. And this is the final product. So it's a really special, we call them like a third space in a community for cultural events. And then you can see the shelter extending back for the farmer's market as well. We recently worked in Smithers, and this is a brownfield site called Longacre. And they just recently received over $2 million to build out the site utilities on the property. So this is a conceptual design. And again, working with the Mayor Cavalier and the community in Smithers, they discussed having local food production, and so community gardens were designed as a part of the plan. Another goal of this project was kind of creating intergenerational spaces. So thinking about how the youth and the elderly could get together around this concept of food production. In Clay County, at the trailhead, just on the north side of town, the Elk River Trail, the students worked on different programming and layout for the site. Part of the programming from the student project didn't include community gardening, but the community added that. This was a part of the high obesity prevention program. And so healthy living, physical activity, local food were a big part of the planning. And it's seen as a great success. They built the park and kind of a funky splash pad with a fire engine and what we call a natural playground with that climbing wall. So it's become a really great asset to the community in Clay. And also the community garden component was integrated into the programming. So anytime we have a public recreation space, we can think about how agriculture and edible landscapes can be built into that plan. So Amy Cook just sent me these images this morning. It looks super successful, very well maintained, and abundant in its harvest. So this is just an example of where we've worked in the last 4 years. And so I'm not sure if any of you are from these communities, but we did do some community planning in all of these places. And most of them included food production. This next 5 years, we're going to be working with the counties listed here. And so if you're in one of those counties and you might want to reach out to either me or Kristen about engaging with the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, high obesity prevention project, because we'll be actively, as the community engagement lab, will be actively working on planning and design projects within these communities. And bringing these types of ideas, and so this idea of foodscaping, right? Planting ornamental edibles within that public space. There are a lot of great tools online related to foodscaping at the residential scale as well that can be really helpful in creating your own personal vision of a residential edible landscape. And then these are a little bit more urban than we'd expect in, well, maybe not in Charleston and Morgantown, but a lot of big metropolitan areas are looking at the beds where they used to plant ornamentals and planting food instead. And so it's been a pretty cool transformation of those urban spaces as being more productive in terms of food. And I was talking to Keely before we started, but this example here of a town called Todmorden in Yorkshire in Great Britain is a really extraordinary example of how a community can look at overall community design and development related to food. And so there was a group of advocates that, again, mapped out all those underutilized spaces in Todmorden and integrated food production into those sites. So do I have a minute to show the video?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. Let's see if I can do it. Can you all hear that?
I think so.
Okay. I won't play the whole thing, but it's a pretty cool project.
country's desperate for something to point at, a real live model. And that's the thing, people are pointing at Todman and saying, this isn't about money, this isn't about staff or funding or empires, it's about a whole community approach to doing things differently.
And education is where it starts.
We've got growing in every school in Todmorden, so we want to put the living heart of schools and children's education to be about food, food production, the economy, the soil, and all of those things that connect us with our environment.
The incredible Edible Todmorden Tony Mulgrew is part of a life-changing initiative at Todmorden High School. He hopes, as school chef, to turn younger members of the community onto the idea of sustainable local food.
There's always complaints about why isn't there chips on the menu every day? So you're going to get that from students. At the end of the day, it's about an educational culture, changing the way people think, how people treat food.
As part of new agricultural courses, the students here grow their own fruit and vegetables and keep chickens for eggs and meat. And all of this yield heads straight to Tony in the school kitchens.
From a chef's perspective, being able to have that fresh produce on your doorstep and educating the kids where good quality food comes from makes a big difference.
Up the road in nearby Walsden, incredible Edible Todmorden's secret weapon faces himself.
If there's anything around the place that's got stuff growing in it, I probably had something to do with it at some stage.
With his fingers in just about every plot, Nick Green encapsulates the new sustainable spirit of Todmorden.
And the last 6 or 9 months, I've been building a market garden learning centre in Walsden, which is about an acre of land fenced off and several large polytunnels to train young people to grow food and business skills with the idea that we kickstart new businesses up on the tops producing food.
And slowly, with the help of students and volunteers, the learning centre is starting to take off.
The last year we grafted 120 apple trees. This year we grafted 300. Originally, the idea was to produce our own trees for planting around town. And we planted something like 700 in various places around the town. And now we're at the point where we're able to sell them through the local garden centre.
But it's not just apple trees where incredible Edible Todmorden is continuing to blossom. There's a community campaign called Every Egg Matters, training and encouraging people to keep hens and sell their eggs locally. In any unused space around Todmorden, planting beds have been created where fruit and vegetables now grow. A community herb garden sits unobtrusively on the main road to Bournemouth. Produce is sprouting outside the police station, the fire station, the train station, and even the health centre. And all of these growing spaces have been created and are run by local volunteers. And the message is, go ahead, take some, it's free.
So I hope that's a little bit inspiring, and it kind of serves as a really cool case study for the work that you all are doing in your communities. So here's the what is it called again? These little symbols?
The QR code.
QR code, and the code word is community. And I'd love, if you have any questions for me, I'd be happy to try to answer them.
Yeah, we have one in the chat. Christine says, do you have any lists of plants that homeowners can follow to grow foods throughout the year in their yards? So I think she's looking for some good edible landscaping.
I can find a list of plants for sure. I can work with Mira, Dr. Mira, who's the extension horticulturalist, and see if we can generate a list for you.
Yeah, that would be great. Yeah, and we could share that on our social media accounts. So that would be awesome if you were able to do that. We'd appreciate it.
Okay.
Does anybody else have any questions? I did put the link in the chat to take the survey, so make sure you do that to earn points for your county. Well, if we don't have any other questions, we really appreciate you jumping on here today. This was very helpful, and I think this is going to help a lot of our growers complete the challenges that we've set forth and feed some people along the way. So we really appreciate you jumping on here and doing this presentation for us.
All right, thank you so much. I appreciate all the work that you're doing. I think it's really important for community development, community health, et cetera. So I'd be happy to help support you in any way that I can.
Oh, someone asked the code word. It was community. So
I mean,
community, yes. All right, well, thank you so much, and everyone have a wonderful day.
okay, thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.